Welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. And now, here's Chris McCann.
Hello and welcome to E-Bible Fellowship's Bible study in the book of Genesis. This is study number 26 in Genesis chapter 41, and I'll begin reading in verse 41. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephnath Paaneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, and Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Okay, we have been thinking of the spiritual meaning of this passage and realizing, since Joseph is a type of Christ, and Pharaoh is bringing him out of prison to interpret his dream, and once Joseph interprets the dream of Pharaoh, their dreams, correctly, then Pharaoh exalts him and lifts him up to be second ruler in the land of Egypt. He'll have a second chariot. And the word second here, in verse 43, and he made him to ride in the second chariot. The word second is also translated as double or copy. The idea of a replica, that Pharaoh has his chariot, glorious chariot, and he has a second chariot. And it may have been typical for kings to have a couple of chariots. For instance, in 2 Chronicles 35, we read of Josiah, king of Judah. He was the last good king of Judah, and he went out to battle with the Egyptians. And we read in 2 Chronicles 35, verse 23, and the archer shot at King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, Have me away, for I am sore wounded. His servants therefore took him out of that chariot and put him in the second chariot that he had. And they brought him to Jerusalem. And he died and was buried in one of the sepulchres of his fathers, and all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. So oddly, when Josiah is struck with an arrow, gravely struck, they get him out of the battle, and once he's out of the battle, they take him out of that chariot and put him in his second chariot. And again, this word second is like the word, or not like the word, but is translated also with the English word double and copy. And so there's a second chariot for the king. Maybe in case something happens to the first chariot, chariot wheel breaks, idea of getting a flat. You have to have the backup. This is the king. You need a duplicate chariot, something spectacular, as he will drive through Egypt, and he can't be seen in just any ordinary chariot. It has to stand out. And that's the chariot. That's the chariot that Pharaoh is giving to Joseph, or actually making him ride in, and he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. So we can see that Joseph is not being lifted up to some kind of middling position. He is being lifted up to rule over all Egypt, exactly as Pharaoh rules over all Egypt. And I think we can understand once we look at this in the spiritual lens of the Trinity, that Pharaoh is a picture of God the Father, Joseph, the Lord Jesus, God the Son, and so Pharaoh is giving him second chariot. It's an equal chariot because Christ is in all ways equal with the Father. He is eternal God himself. Well, anyway, here, Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. I have set thee. Now, probably the first thing we should keep in mind is that Joseph is coming from prison. And remember, in the Bible, prison identifies with being under the wrath of God, or in hell or the grave. For instance, in Matthew chapter 20, Matthew 5, I think it's verse 25. Matthew 5, we read in verse 25, agree with thine adversary quickly, whiles thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto thee, thou shalt by no means come out thence till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing. You have to pay your debt, like they say, pay your debt to society. If you're sentenced to 10 years, you have to serve 10 years, and then you can come out because you have made payment. And so God really pictures prison in that sense as a place of punishment, and that's what hell is. Hell, of course, not in the traditional and incorrect understanding that the churches have presented hell. No, as the Bible presents hell as the grave, a place of being cut off, of perishing, of death, And we can prove that prison is a picture of hell and of death. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20. Revelation 20. And we read of an angel coming down from heaven in verse 1. And the Greek word angelos can also properly be translated messenger. And Christ is the messenger of the covenant. He is this messenger, this called angel in the King James. Just like in the Old Testament, we read of the angel of Jehovah, and it's the same thing in the Old Testament with the Hebrew word translated angel can also properly be translated messenger. And the angel of Jehovah is always God. When we read the angel of Jehovah came to Samson's parents, that was God, that was the Lord Jesus himself. Well, anyway, Revelation 20, verse 1, I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan and bound him 1,000 years. And Jesus bound Satan at the cross. That's when the figurative 1,000-year period began. And he bound him throughout the church age period. We won't go there, but over in Revelation 11, verse 7, we read that the beast comes up out of the pit. Well, I will go there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say an untruth, but it's always better for me. I guess it kind of registers more to me to read it. But Revelation 11, verse 7, and when they shall have finished their testimony, that's the two witnesses who had a testimony time or period of time within the churches and congregations during the church age. So when they have finished their testimony, identifies with the end of the church age. And when did the church age end? The beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. The beast ascends. He comes up out of the pit. In Revelation 20, we're reading of him going down into the pit. Christ bound him at the cross. And how long will he be bound? He's bound him 1,000 years. So the starting point for the 1,000 years is the cross. The ending point of the 1,000 years is the end of the church age. That's why I said it's a figurative 1,000 years, not an actual 1,000 years as the number 1,000, 10, 100, or 1,000 or 10,000, multiples of 10, spiritually points to completeness in the Bible. And in this case, it would be the completeness of Satan's binding, which is in line or it's simultaneous with the church age. Throughout the entire church age, he's bound. And then verse 3, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. And again, Revelation 11, verse 7, the beast. It's another name. Here, he was called the old serpent, the devil, Satan, the dragon. So there's 4 names. And the beast is the name God assigns the devil, Satan, and so forth, in particular to the Great Tribulation period. And that's the little season once he's loosed. And so his 1,000-year period ends, or the ending of it coincides with the death of the 2 witnesses. Do you see that? Do you see how that works? He's coming up. He's coming up. Revelation 11, verse 7, when the 2 witnesses have finished their testimony. He's bound here, 1,000 years. So therefore, he's coming up after the 1,000 years in Revelation 11, verse 7, which is why we know it's not literal, because the cross was 33 AD. A literal 1,000 years would have been 1033 AD. And no, there's nothing the Bible indicates about that period of time. The church age basically continued on for almost 1,000 years after that, from 1033 to 1988 was the actual end of the church age, and that would be 955 years after 1033, and that's why it wasn't literal 1,000, but figurative. In actuality, it turned out to be 1,955 years. But again, don't look at the number 1,000. Look at its meaning, which is completeness. He's bound for the completeness of time that the Lord determined, which was the church age. And then he'll be loosed. Well, now let's read a few verses further in Revelation 20, and we'll see that he was loose. Verse 7, And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Well, I thought he was cast into a bottomless pit and shut up and a seal set upon him. He was. Well, why is it referring to a prison? Because the bottomless pit, which is hell, which is death, and we'll prove that in a second. The bottomless pit is likened to a prison. As simple as that. God uses many types and figures in the Bible. And one is that the bottomless pit, the pit, also called the deep, the Greek word translated bottomless pit is abysso, from which we get the English abyss. And we understand that if you go out a very deep part of the ocean and, submersible goes down and divers and so forth, they descend into the deep, maybe 1.5 miles down from surface. It's the deep part of the ocean, the abyss, and that word comes from the Greek abysso, bottomless pit. And you can see the imagery, right? It's bottomless. You just keep going down and down and down. Well, God here likens it, because Satan was bound in the bottomless pit, but he's loosed out of his prison. So he's loosed out of the bottomless pit, and so a synonym would be prison. Over in Romans chapter 10, we find the same Greek word abysso in relationship to the Lord Jesus. In Romans 10, verses 6 and 7, it says, "But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise, say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven, that is to bring Christ down from above, or who shall descend into the deep, into the abysso? Who shall descend into the deep, or the bottomless pit?" Then in parentheses, by putting this in parentheses, it's an explanation. Who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring up Christ again from the dead. From the dead. Because Christ died, in dying, he went into the deep. He went into the abyss. Now, can you see the link? Can you see how or why it's said that Satan received a death blow at the cross in Revelation 13 when the beast comes up out of the sea, and now we can understand the relationship between coming up out of the sea and the bottomless pit, because the bottomless pit is also translated as the deep. And of course, the sea would be like deep water. Revelation 13, verse 1, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." The death blow that the Lord Jesus struck to Satan at the cross in binding him and putting him into the bottomless pit, into the deep. Well, Christ descended into the deep, that is, into death. He went down into the grave. Grave and hell are also synonymous, and so to be bound as Satan was bound and cast into the bottomless pit is equivalent to being dead. He received a death blow, his deadly wound. But when he comes up, his deadly wound is healed. It's healed. It's like he has been restored to life, almost in a very evil way, we could say, akin to resurrection. But that's the idea. That's the idea of Joseph being in prison. And remember when we were back there in Genesis 39 or 40, and we discussed how prison was a condition of hell and so forth. Well, that's what we have to keep in mind here in Genesis 41, as Pharaoh is the one who took Joseph out of prison, isn't he? Remember, he was told that by the butler that when the butler was in prison, that there was a man who interpreted the dreams, and then in verse 14 of Genesis 41, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. Say the raiment of a prisoner, the raiment of one under the wrath of God. And he changed it, and he clean shaven and came hastily running, because once the picture is, once the penalty has been paid, or the will of God accomplished, as with the tableau, the demonstration of the atonement, as Christ died a second time in going to the cross, then no delay. Okay. Early the third morning, not late in the day, but early the third morning, while it's still dark, Christ rises from the dead. And so that's the picture. Pharaoh's the one who brought him out of prison. God the Father raises Christ from the dead. And then see, Genesis 41:41, Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. All the land of Egypt. Now, Egypt normally typifies the world. Often typifies the world. It can typify the church that is seeing corruption in that same passage in Revelation 11. Once the beast comes up and the two witnesses are slain, lying dead in the street, then God makes reference, this is a reference to the churches of the world, the corporate church, and he says that they're spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. Egypt is the house of bondage, and since the Spirit of Christ departed the church, there's no more redemption. No man will purchase or redeem any in the churches and congregations. There'll be no more deliverance, as it were, from Egypt, the world, but rather it's a return to Egypt, return to the house of bondage, and Satan enters into the church at that time. Pharaoh. I know it's so complicated, but it's unusual for God to use Pharaoh in a positive way in the Bible, as he's doing with this Pharaoh who brings Joseph out of the prison. It's unusual, but God is doing it. So we can't be just I learned that Pharaoh is a picture of Satan, therefore he's always a picture of Satan. We can't say that unless we've checked every place in the Bible, and this passage will not allow it. I mean, just try to think about that. Pharaoh, if he were Satan here, bringing Christ out of prison, elevating Christ to rule beneath himself. You see how that doesn't fit at all? It cannot fit. It will not spiritually harmonize with the whole Bible. No, Satan doesn't have that kind of power. He can't bring Christ from hell and do these things. So it has to be, God is just using Pharaoh in this instance to paint the picture of the gospel, and it would go back to the foundation of the world, and also we can understand there's elements of 33 AD with the manifestation that the Lord Jesus made, showing forth what he did at the foundation of the world. So of course there would be similarities. Well, I think that's probably enough for this study. Lord willing, we'll pick this up again when we get together in our next Bible study in the book of Genesis.
Thank you for joining us for E-Bible Fellowship's Evening Bible Studies with your host and Bible teacher, Chris McCann. For more studies and information, visit our website at www.ebiblefellowship.org. Until our next Bible study, may the Lord's perfect will be done.